wanton police violence, brutality. In the words of Reverend William Barber, a search warrant or a warrant for someone's arrest is not a license to kill, but all too often, in the case of Andrew Brown, as we saw in so many other cases across this country, it's guns ablaze when it's about young black men, unarmed. And the police, as Colin was pointing out, continue to feel invincible and untouchable. They continue to walk through our communities, through oppressed communities, and they're not treated like an everyday person. So they can kill at will, they can humiliate, they brutalize, as happens on a daily basis across this country, and they have no fear of any repercussions. But things in 2021 have changed. It was only a week ago that Derek Chauvin was finally found guilty, and I think that sent shockwaves through the rank and file of police departments across, that they're not as invincible as they were a week ago. And that's thanks to a movement of millions and millions, not just here in the United States, but across the world, against state violence.
And Colin, that's the thing, to Danny's point, with respect to the George Floyd case, all the protests, the movements, not just in the U.S., but worldwide, to address this very pressing issue of disproportionate police violence against people of color. My question to you, why are the cops not showing any kind of transparency in this case, which is really just more so upsetting the black, the white, the brown, every community you could think of, including the Browns' family members?
Well, most of the time it's because they haven't had to and they don't want to. If they show transparency, it would definitely show a level of guilt right off the bat, which is why we got as far as we did with the George Floyd case. Imagine, just for a second, if that case, there was no video. If there was no video, it was just the word of Derek Chauvin and a bunch of random witnesses, and obviously not George Floyd. So we've seen this type of scenario time and time again where police are acquitted, there's a hung jury, because there's no direct evidence. It's all because of that young woman's video evidence that this case went as far as it did, and we saw an actual prosecution of a police officer. Although we know this is not the first time that a police officer wrongfully killed an unarmed black man or wrongfully killed anyone. I mean, this is a pattern that we have seen. Also, we've seen this being protested in other countries like the UK, where there have been other deaths from police officers by the hands of police officers. So again, we are seeing a more united movement. Some would argue that very recently we have seen a very increased campaign against violence against Asians, and that was pretty universal. But then you didn't see many Asians talking about the defense of unarmed black men when they're killed by police. But that's perhaps another conversation. What we are seeing is an increased interest. That could be because of COVID-19. Many of us are trapped inside. We're captivated by what's on the screen, and more understanding as Black Lives Matter has picked up a more tone. And the reason why we're not seeing this transparency in this particular case with Andrew Brown, legal analysts and attorneys would say, well, there was a law in North Carolina that disallowed the viewing of the video, and it all depends on a judge's discretion. But if you're to look at it in a general sense, it's because police haven't had to have that level of accountability where they've had to show their video right away. They've often been able to hide behind laws or the discretion of a judge.
And Danny, why do you think it takes so much and so much violence and so much spotlight and so many protests and police still continue not to get it right?
The police don't want to get it right. White supremacy doesn't want to get it right, because this is white supremacy. This is an entire system, and the police are the enforcers of that system. We should go back to the original roots of the police. They were slave patrols. They were capturing maroons and freed slaves. So this is much bigger than just tweaking the system. This is bigger than just reforms. These reforms are important, but then we see that the police don't turn on their body cameras or don't wear them, or in the case of the execution of Andrew Brown, they only hand over the 20 seconds that's strategic for them. They don't hand over the entire unedited video. So this is more than any one simple reformist demand. This really challenges the heart and soul of white supremacy, of capitalism, segregation in this country, and centuries of national oppression of black and brown people. This is a part of a larger struggle for the self-determination of those oppressed communities.
All right, gentlemen, time has gotten the better of us. I want to thank you both for joining us on the program. Colin Campbell.